The hungry stranger, the neon lights of Zarella City flickered under a purple sky. The air smelled like fried synth meat and alien spices. Jackson, a human soldier on leave, walked alone through the crowded market streets. He had no destination, just the need to think and breathe. War had ended, but peace never came to his mind. He passed by shops selling robotic pets, glowing fruits, and black market gadgets. It was noisy, colorful, and alive, unlike the war zones he was used to. Jackson stopped by a food stall and ordered a hot roll with spice drizzle. Just as he took his first bite, a voice interrupted him. "I have no credits for food. My body is the only currency I have." Jackson turned and saw her. She was young, maybe 19 in Earth years. Her skin was a soft silver blue, and her eyes glowed like emerald fire. Long white hair fell over her shoulders, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She stood there, shivering, hungry, and desperate. Jackson blinked, unsure what to say. "Excuse me?" he asked, confused. "I haven't eaten in 3 days," she whispered. "You can use me." For one meal, Jackson looked at her closely. There were faded scanner tattoos on her wrist, marks used for tracking slaves. He felt a knot in his stomach. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I don't do that." The girl looked down, embarrassed. "Sorry," she said, turning away. "I thought maybe a human would understand." "Wait," Jackson said. "Sit." He ordered another hot roll and a drink. She hesitated, then slowly sat on the bench beside him. When the food came, she didn't thank him. She just ate, fast and messy. Jackson watched in silence. After a few minutes, she slowed down. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes were calmer now. "You don't want anything from me?" she asked quietly. "No," Jackson replied. "I just hate seeing someone treated like trash." The girl nodded slowly. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I escaped from the breeding labs." Jackson's hand froze mid-air. He had heard of those places, secret facilities where alien girls were made and sold like property. "What do you mean, escaped?" he asked. "I ran," she said. "I slipped past the guards and hid on a garbage ship. Ended up here, but they're looking for me. They always look." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "How long have you been hiding?" "For months," she whispered. "I sleep in broken vents, under bridges, anywhere." Jackson sighed. This wasn't his problem, he told himself. He wasn't a hero. It's just a tired man trying to find peace. But Lyra's voice pulled him back. "You're the first person who gave me food without touching me," she said. Her voice cracked, almost like a child. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang in the distance, not too far. Lyra's eyes widened. "They're here," she said, jumping up. "The trackers, they're scanning." Jackson stood up too, scanning the crowd. He saw 2 tall, black-armored figures moving quickly between the stalls. Each held scanning devices, glowing red. "They know I'm here," Lyra said, panicking. "I stayed too long. They always find me if I stay." Without thinking, Jackson grabbed her hand. "This way," he said, pulling her into a narrow alley. They ran past dumpsters, broken lights, and sleeping street people. Jackson didn't know where he was going, only that they had to get away. Behind them, the trackers shouted something in a language he didn't recognize. A red beam shot past his head. Burning into the wall, they turned left, then right. Down a stairwell into the Undercity, where the lights were dim and the laws were weaker. Jackson finally stopped behind a rusted door and pushed it open. Inside was an old storage room filled with crates and dust. "Stay quiet," he said, breathing hard. Lyra collapsed against the wall, still shaking. "Why did you help me?" she asked, looking up at him. Jackson stared at her, his chest rising and falling. "I don't know," he replied, "but I think your life is worth more than one meal." Outside, the trackers passed by, their footsteps fading. For now, they were safe, but Jackson knew this was just the beginning. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, human." He nodded, not realizing that with that one act of kindness, he had just stepped into something much bigger than he ever imagined. A meal with a price to dark Undercity was cold and quiet. Jackson sat near the wall, listening to Lyra breathe softly beside him. A broken light above them flickered, casting strange shadows on her face. She had fallen asleep on the floor with her back against a crate. He had no idea what he was doing. One meal turned into a chase, and now here he was, hiding from bounty hunters with a stranger. But something about her felt different. She wasn't just running, she was surviving. Jackson stood up, careful. Not to wake her, he walked toward the small window slit in the corner and peeked out. The streets above were still busy, but quieter now. He spotted two shadowy figures scanning people randomly. "They're still looking," he muttered. "You shouldn't have helped me," Lyra whispered from behind. Jackson turned, surprised she was awake. "You'd be safer without me," she added, her voice low. "I'm a soldier," Jackson replied. "Running from trouble isn't what I do." Lyra stood, brushing dirt off her pants. "You don't know what you've stepped into," she said. She opened her hand and showed him a small black chip, glowing faintly. "What's that?" He asked. "It's a memory shard," she said. "Inside it, our blueprints, secrets, forbidden knowledge. They hid it in my body before I escaped." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Who hid it?" "My creators," she whispered. "They made me, trained me. And when I failed to obey, they threw me into the lab to be sold." "So, you're not just a refugee," Jackson said slowly. "You're a weapon." Lyra looked down, shame in her eyes. "They called me Project Eden," she said. "A hybrid. Designed to adapt and survive." Jackson took a deep breath. No wonder bounty hunters were chasing her. She wasn't just someone's property, she was stolen technology. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed above them. Lyra flinched and grabbed his arm. "Scanners," she whispered. "They're forcing their way in." Jackson checked his pulse gun, still working. 2 shots left. "This place won't hold." He said, "We need to move." They slipped through a back exit, running deeper. Into the Undercity maze, they passed broken doors, flickering signs, and pools of chemical waste. Eventually, they reached a wide metal tunnel with steam pouring from the vents. "We can rest here," Lyra said, pointing to a side chamber. Inside was an abandoned food stall with broken counters and empty cans. Jackson sat down, breathing heavily. Lyra opened a crate and pulled out a small power bar. Her eyes lit up. "Still good," she said, offering him half. They both ate in silence. Then Lyra asked quietly, "Why did you really help me?" Jackson stared at her, thinking, "I guess I saw something familiar in your eyes." He said, "Something I saw in the mirror after the war. Fear, loneliness, hunger." Lyra looked at him and smiled for the first time. It was small, unsure, but real. "No one has ever spoken to me like that," she said. "They either chase me, want me, or use me." Jackson shook his head. "That's not living," he said. "That's surviving." Suddenly, a sharp beep echoed through the room. Lyra froze and pulled out a small communicator from her belt. It flashed red. "They found me," she whispered. A voice came through the speaker. "Rough and deep, Project Eden. Surrender yourself," it said. "You have no place to run. Your location is locked. We are coming." Jackson grabbed the communicator and crushed it under his boot. "We have to leave now," he said. "But where will we go?" Lyra asked, panicking. "They have drones, scanners, satellites. Then we don't go up." Jackson said, "We go down." He pointed to a nearby vent grate on the floor. "The undertunnels lead to the old spaceport. We might find a way." "Off this planet," Lyra nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Okay," she said, "but if they catch me, I'll destroy the shard before they take me." Jackson didn't answer. He just opened the grate and climbed down. Lyra followed, the darkness swallowing them both as they descended into the unknown. Jackson whispered to himself, "One meal, and now I'm part of something way bigger above them." A black drone hovered over the street. It scanned the area, then turned and sent a silent signal, "Target acquired." Refuge in the underside tunnel beneath Zarella smelled like rust, old chemicals, and something long dead. Jackson led the way, his hand on the wall as he followed the narrow path. Lyra followed closely, her steps light, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Above them, the sounds of the city faded, replaced by dripping water and distant echoes. "This place feels haunted," Lyra whispered. "It's just abandoned," Jackson replied. Not haunted, but even he wasn't sure. Every shadow looked like it could move. Every noise sounded like a whisper meant only for them. The path split into two, and Jackson paused. He looked at a broken sign on the wall, half buried in dust. It read, "Cargo Route 7. This way," he said. Pointing left, they walked deeper. Finally entering a wide tunnel with old metal tracks running through it, the tunnel ceiling curved above them like a giant rib cage. "Freight trains used to move through here decades ago," Jackson said. "Now it's just a graveyard." They reached a storage area filled with broken crates and collapsed scaffolding. A large, overturned cargo container leaned against the wall. Half open, Jackson climbed inside and looked around. "No scanners in here," he said. "We can rest." Lyra crawled in beside him and sat down. For the first time in hours, she closed her eyes and leaned her head back. Her breathing slowed, and the tension in her shoulders dropped. Jackson sat opposite her, his back against the wall. "What's inside that shard?" he asked. "You said blueprints and secrets, but what kind?" Lyra opened her eyes slowly. "It's a map," she said, "to a hidden facility. The place where I was made. It contains the original designs of the Project Eden program." Jackson frowned. "Why would someone risk hiding that inside you?" Lyra looked away. "My creator. A scientist named Thalos," she said. "He didn't want his work to fall into the wrong hands. He thought if I escaped with the shard, someone good might find it and end the project." Jackson nodded slowly. "So now you're not just running for your life," he said. "You're carrying a key to something much bigger." "Yes," Lyra said. "And if the wrong people get it, they won't stop with just me." Suddenly, a soft beep echoed from above. Lyra jumped to her feet, her hand on her knife. Jackson peered through a crack in the container wall. A floating scanner drone hovered outside, blinking red. "We've got company," he whispered. Lyra reached into her jacket and pulled out a small disc. She pressed it, and it glowed blue. "What's that?" Jackson asked. "A static pulse," she replied. "It'll knock out the drone." "For 10 seconds. 10 seconds," Jackson said, raising his brow. "That's all we need," Lyra said. And through the disc, it clinked outside. Pulsed once, and the drone dropped like a rock. "Move," Jackson shouted, jumping out. He grabbed the drone and smashed its core with his boot. "No signals," he said. "We're clear." For now, they ran from the storage area into another tunnel. This one lined with old maintenance rooms. They found one with a door still working and slipped inside. Inside was an old lab. Dusty, cold, but full of powered terminals. "This is an old network station," Jackson said. Lyra walked up to one terminal and plugged in a cable from her arm. The screen flickered, then loaded an old interface. "I can mask my signal from here," she said, typing fast, "but it won't last long." Jackson watched her work. She wasn't just some lab experiment. She was smart, quick, and dangerous in the right ways. He realized that every minute he spent with her, the war in his heart got quieter. Suddenly, Lyra gasped. "They found us," she said. "A squad is coming. Ground forces, 3 minutes away." Jackson pulled out his pulse gun and checked the charge, still 2 shots. "Time to move again," he said. Lyra paused, looking at the map on the screen. There's a transport bay 2 tunnels ahead, she said. We might find an old shuttle there. Then that's our exit, Jackson said, opening the door. As they stepped out, the ground shook slightly. A soft hum grew louder in the distance. Jackson turned to Lyra. You said you were designed to survive. Let's prove it. She gave him a tight nod. And you said you were a soldier, she said. Smiling slightly. Let's see if that still means something. Together, they ran toward the unknown. Behind them, red lights lit the tunnels. And heavy boots stomped closer. In front of them, one broken hope remained freedom. The price of freedom. The tunnel walls rumbled as Jackson and Lyra ran. Faint red lights blinked in the distance behind them. Chasing their shadows, the sound of metal boots grew louder with every second. They're faster than I thought, Jackson said, panting. They have motion trackers, Lyra replied, but they won't shoot me. They want me alive. That's not comforting, Jackson muttered. They turned a corner and reached a large sealed door. A faded sign above read Sector 12 Transport Bay. Lyra pulled out a tool from her belt. I can bypass the lock. She said, give me 20 seconds. Jackson turned and aimed his pulse gun at the hallway behind them. The soft hum of drones and armored steps echoed louder. He clenched his jaw, counting seconds in his head. Lyra's fingers moved fast. Sparks flying from the lock. 15 seconds, she said. Almost there, behind Jackson. A drone turned the corner, blinking red. It charged its laser. Jackson shot first. The blast hit the drone's eye, sending it crashing to the floor. 10 seconds, Lyra said, voice tighter now. Another drone appeared behind the first one. Jackson aimed again, but his pulse gun clicked empty. No shots left. He growled. Suddenly, the door to Sector 12 slid open with a hiss. Go! Lyra shouted. Pulling Jackson inside, she slammed her hand on the panel and sealed the door. They ran into the old transport bay, a massive space with rusted vehicles, broken cables, and one half-buried shuttle. There, Lyra said, pointing. It's damaged. Jackson said, it won't fly, maybe not far. She replied, but far enough. They sprinted to the shuttle, opened the hatch, and climbed inside. The cockpit was dusty, but still had power. Lyra sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers flying across the controls. Jackson opened a floor panel and began rerouting wires. We need more power to the thrusters, he said. This fuel cell is dead. There's a traitor I know, Lyra said. Suddenly, he deals in stolen tech, old parts. He might have what we need. Can we trust him? Jackson asked. No, she said, but we don't have a choice. She handed Jackson a map with coordinates. He operates above ground in a junk district. Jackson nodded. I'll go, he said. You stay hidden here. If they find you, they'll take me back. Lyra finished, her voice hollow. Jackson paused, then added, if I don't return in 2 hours. Power up and run without me. Lyra stared at him. Don't say that, she said. I owe you more than that. He gave a small smile. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not anymore. He left quickly. Disappearing through the access tunnel, time passed slowly. Lyra sat alone in the cockpit. Fingers twitching, eyes on the clock. Minutes felt like hours. She watched the door, half expecting Jackson to burst in or never return. Exactly 2 hours later, the hatch opened. Jackson stepped in, covered in dust, holding a large fuel cell in both hands. Got it, he said, breathing hard. The traitor wanted your location. I gave him my fists instead. Lyra laughed for the first time. It was light and short, but it made Jackson smile too. They installed the fuel cell, and the shuttle hummed to life. We have 30 minutes before another patrol scans this area, Lyra said. Then, let's get ready. Jackson replied as they prepared for launch. A red light blinked on the console. Tracker, Lyra whispered. They're here, outside. Armored guards marched into the bay, Their leader, a tall alien with glowing yellow eyes, shouted. "Project Eden, you cannot leave." Lyra stepped out of the shuttle slowly. Raising her hands, "I will come back," she said. "But you let him go." Jackson grabbed her wrist. "No," he said. "We came this far together." The alien commander laughed. "You are nothing but a human rat," he said. "She was made for us, not you." Jackson raised his fists. "I don't care what she was made for," he growled. "She chooses who she is now." Suddenly, Lyra pressed a hidden button on her belt. A shockwave burst from her body, a hidden defense pulse. It knocked the guards back. Disabling their suits for seconds, Jackson grabbed her hand. "Run!" he shouted. They jumped into the shuttle, slammed the hatch, and took off. The engines screamed. The old ship, shaking outside. Lasers fired, but missed. The shuttle burst through the upper gates and shot into the sky. In the cockpit, Lyra sat in silence, her hand over her chest. Jackson looked over and asked, "Was it worth it?" She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "but freedom always comes with a price." Memories that hurt the stars outside the shuttle window shimmered like scattered diamonds. Jackson sat in silence, watching the streaks of light from the hyperjump tunnel. Beside him, Lyra sat curled up in the co-pilot seat, arms wrapped around her knees. The engines hummed low, calm for now. They were safe, at least for the moment, but Jackson knew it wouldn't last. They had stolen a military tag shuttle, disabled soldiers, and fled with stolen tech and Lyra. She was still being hunted. "Where are we headed?" she asked softly, breaking the silence out of their jurisdiction. Jackson replied, "There's a neutral moon colony called Narrows. They don't ask questions there." Lyra nodded. But her face remained tight, distant. "You should have left me," she whispered. "They wouldn't be after you if you had." Jackson leaned back and closed his eyes. "You really think I could do that?" Lyra looked down at her hands. "Most people would," she said. "They see me as a product, not a person." Jackson didn't answer right away. He reached for the small medkit under the dashboard and handed it to her. "You're bleeding," he said, pointing to a cut on her shoulder. She took it, muttering thanks, and opened the bandage pack. As she cleaned the wound, her hands trembled. "I remember the first time they cut me," she said suddenly. Jackson looked up, surprised, but didn't interrupt. "I was 12. Lyra continued, her voice flat. "They said I wasn't responding. Too neural training fast enough, so they shocked my brain." Again and again, she paused, her fingers tightening around the cloth. "I screamed until I lost my voice," she said. "And after that, they locked me in a cold room for 3 days." Jackson's jaw clenched. He had seen horror during the war. But this was different. It was cruelty disguised as science. "I used to dream about running," Lyra added. "But even in my dreams, they always found me." Until now, Jackson reached across and gently touched her wrist. "You ran far enough," he said. "And now? You're not alone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I hate crying," she said. "It makes me feel weak." "It doesn't," Jackson replied. "It makes you human." A soft silence settled between them again. Lyra leaned her head against the cold window and stared at the stars. "You ever lose someone?" she asked. Jackson looked down at his boots. "My entire unit," he said. 12 soldiers. All gone during a sabotage op they trusted me to lead. And I failed them. Lyra turned her head. "I'm sorry," she said, genuinely. "War breaks more than bones." Jackson muttered, "It breaks who you are inside." They both sat quietly. 2 broken souls drifting through space. The shuttle beeped softly, alerting them to their approach to Narrow's moon. Lyra sat up and wiped her face. "We'll need fake IDs," she said. "The scanners will pick us up otherwise. I've got a contact." Jackson replied, "An old smuggler named Vex. He owes me a favor. Are you sure he's still alive? Lyra asked, raising an eyebrow. He's too stubborn to die, Jackson said. Smiling for the first time in hours, as the shuttle slowed from hyperjump, the surface of Narrows came into view. A gray, cratered moon, covered in massive domes and flickering lights. It looked like a junkyard built into a city. Messy, noisy, and full of secrets. Welcome to freedom, Jackson said, or something like it. They landed in one of the back alleys of the trade zone. Jackson powered down the ship and handed Lyra a dark cloak. Keep your face hidden, he said. And don't talk unless you have to. She nodded and pulled the hood over her head. They stepped out together into the cold air of Narrows. Greasy steam hissed from vents, and aliens of all kinds moved through the shadows. As they made their way to the market, Lyra suddenly froze, her eyes locked on a poster glowing on a holowall. It was her, tagged as missing property reward. 100,000 credits, return alive. Jackson swore under his breath and pulled her closer. We need to move fast, he said. People will sell their mothers for that kind of money. I'm not going back. Lyra whispered. No, Jackson said. You're not. They reached a small shop made of scrap metal and blinking panels. Inside sat an old man with cybernetic eyes and 6 fingers. Vex, the smuggler, grinned when he saw Jackson. Well, well, the ghost returns, he said, and he brought trouble. I need new IDs and a transport code, Jackson said. Vex raised an eyebrow. Must be a special girl, he said, staring at Lyra. She is, Jackson replied, without hesitation. Asterisk escape plan alpha inside the cramped, dimly lit shop. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. Monitors flickered with old code, and the air smelled like burning plastic. Jackson stood tall, but his hand stayed near the hidden pulse blade at his waist. He didn't trust Vex, not fully. Not after what happened years ago. The old smuggler sat behind a messy desk, feet up, chewing on something. Red and bitter, so, Vex said, eyes glowing faint green. You want 2 new IDs and a transport code. Off-world access and full wipe from all scans. He leaned forward and grinned. That's not cheap. Jackson glanced at Lyra, her hood still pulled low, her body tense. You owe me, Vex, he said. I pulled you out of that prison ship. On Tarkanine, Vex chuckled. You did, he said, but that was a long time ago. He tapped a metal drawer, slid it open, and pulled out 2 silver cards. These'll get you past Narrows customs, he said, but the off-world clearance. That costs how much? Jackson asked. 5,000 credits. Vex replied, or, he added with a smirk, she could stay with me a while. Work it off before Jackson could move. Lyra stepped forward and slammed her hand on the table. Ouch. The table sparked from the hidden shock pulse in her palm. I'm not for sale, she said coldly. Vex didn't flinch. You're dangerous, he said. Amused? Fine. 5,000 it is. Jackson sighed, pulling out a worn chip from his jacket. He slid it across the table. That's everything. I have, he said. Clean it and burn the records. Vex inserted the chip, scanned it, and nodded. Done, he said, tossing them the clearance file. Where to now? Lyra asked as they stepped back outside. There's a cargo freighter leaving tonight. Jackson replied, headed to a free zone in Sector G4. They'll take us if we have codes. Lyra nodded, but her eyes remained on the shadows. Someone's watching, she whispered. Jackson turned. Spotting a movement on the rooftop above, a glint, a lens, sniper drone, he said, move, now. They dashed through the narrow alleys of Narrows, their feet echoing on metal grates. Jackson guided them through hidden paths only smugglers used. He had memorized every corner of this city years ago. Lyra ducked under a low pipe, her heart pounding. Why now? She asked, breathless. Why didn't they come sooner? Because Vex sold us out, Jackson growled. Those IDs were marked. They followed the transaction. We trusted him. Lyra said, angry and betrayed. No. Jackson corrected. I used him, big difference. They reached the loading bay of the freighter, an old ship called the Dustwing. It stood tall and ugly. But the engines glowed warm, ready to launch. A tall woman with dark skin and robotic arms stood guard at the ramp. You, Jackson? She asked. Yeah, he said, holding up the transport code. Me and the girl, 2 passengers. The woman scanned the code and nodded. Get in. We leave in 10. As they boarded, a loud explosion rocked the street behind them. Debris flew into the air and alarms blared across the city. They're here, Lyra said, eyes wide. Inside the freighter, crew members shouted, locking doors and sealing cargo. The captain, a grizzled alien with 4 eyes, barked orders from the deck. Launch early, we've got trouble. Jackson and Lyra strapped in as the engines roared to life. The freighter lifted off, shaking, lights flickering as it climbed outside. A black drone swarm flew up after them, shooting plasma bolts. Shields are dropping. A crew member shouted, brace for impact. The ship jolted, alarms screaming. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath. A prayer, maybe, or just a desperate hope. Suddenly, the freighter broke atmosphere and entered the void of space. The drones stopped chasing, blocked. By planetary boundaries, a sigh of relief spread through the cabin. We made it, Jackson said. His voice low, but Lyra didn't relax. She looked out the window at the stars. This isn't over, she said. They'll follow us, then we stay ahead. Jackson replied. He leaned forward and touched her shoulder gently. No more. Running alone, Lyra turned to him, her eyes softer now. You never asked me why I kept the shard, she said. You never once tried to take it. I figured if you wanted to give it, you would, Jackson answered. I'm not here to take anything, she smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time I show you what's inside. One meal, one life. The freighter, Dustwing, floated silently through deep space. Inside, the lights were dimmed and the hum of the engines was steady and calm. Jackson sat across from Lyra in the small passenger cabin. Between them, a glowing shard hovered above a portable scanner, pulsing like a heartbeat. This is it? Jackson asked, eyes fixed on the display. Lyra nodded. This shard holds the origin code of Project Eden. She said, the truth, the first files. The names of those who created me, and hundreds like me. Jackson leaned back slowly, and, you trust me enough to show this now? You didn't take anything from me, Lyra said softly. You gave me food, and something I forgot existed, choice. Jackson stayed quiet. His mind filled with thoughts of what this information could mean. Shutting down Project Eden could save others from what Lyra had suffered, but exposing it would also make her the target of every powerful group in the galaxy. Why did they really create you? Jackson asked. Lyra hesitated. They wanted the perfect companion. She said, obedient, beautiful, skilled in combat, and pleasure. She looked away, but Thalos, the lead scientist, he saw something wrong. He modified my code to let me think freely. They found out, she continued, her voice cold now. They killed him and locked me away. Jackson clenched his fists. They failed, he said. You're free? Not yet. Lyra replied. Not until I erase every copy of the Eden program. Suddenly, the ship's speaker crackled. This is Captain Braddock. We've picked up an encrypted message. Jackson and Lyra rushed to the bridge. The captain pointed to the screen, where a faint signal blinked. It's coming from inside our cargo bay. He said, frowning. We scanned for bugs, but this was buried deep. Jackson cursed under his breath. It's a tracker. Lyra stepped forward and tapped the console. Decoding the message, it's worse, she said. They're not Just tracking us. They've already sent a ship. The captain's face grew pale. A battleship just entered our sector, he said. If we fight, we die. Jackson turned to Lyra. We need to end this now. She nodded slowly. Pulling the shard from her belt, I can overload it, she said. Send a virus through their system once they connect to retrieve the data. But I'll have to open a live link. They'll know exactly where we are. Do it, Jackson said, without hesitation. The captain gave them access to the main terminal. Lyra sat down, fingers flying across the keys. The screen filled with lines of alien code, glowing red. Jackson stood beside her, guarding the door with his pulse blade ready. The crew watched in silence as tension filled the air. They're connecting, Lyra said. Virus is injecting. 40%, 70%, 90%. A warning siren blared suddenly. Enemy ship has locked missiles, the ship's AI announced. Almost done, Lyra whispered, sweat running down her temple. Just a few more seconds. Jackson gripped her shoulder. I trust you. He said finish it with one final tap. The shard pulsed bright blue and then shattered into dust. The virus launched completely, destroying the enemy system from within. Lyra gasped, falling back in the chair. It's done, she whispered. They can't make any more of me. On the screen, the enemy ship began to spiral. Systems failing, power dying. It drifted into the void, blind, deaf, and broken. Cheers erupted from the crew. But Jackson didn't cheer. He only looked at Lyra, her chest rising and falling, her eyes full of emotion. Later, as the dust wing floated silently toward a safe zone, Lyra and Jackson sat alone in the ship's observatory. Stars passed by like rivers of light. Do you regret it? Jackson asked quietly. Lyra shook her head. No, she said. Because for the first time, I feel like I'm more than what they made me. Jackson smiled softly. You've always been more. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you remember? She asked. The first thing I said to you. Jackson chuckled. You offered your body for one meal? Lyra laughed too, this time with real warmth. I thought I had nothing to give, she said, but you gave me that meal.
Oh.
And something more important. What's that? Jackson asked. A reason to live, she whispered. Outside, the stars kept shining. Inside, a broken girl and a tired soldier sat together in silence, bound not by war or code, but by kindness and one shared meal.